In this video for our discussion of humans and the environment, I want to focus on applying the IPAT equation to the hydrologic system. And so we're going to talk a little bit about water overuse and water quality and pollution. Now, we do need to be clear on a couple of terms here. So we're going to talk about pollution, and that means the addition or alteration of water or air or soil, an alteration, some addition or alteration to an environment that in general due to concentration causes harm. We're also going to talk about eutrophication, and it's a special form of, in a sense, process associated with pollution. And so we'll get to what that means in just a minute. Eutrophication leads then to what we call dead zones or hypoxic zones, and that is areas of marine systems that have become oxygen poor, or in fact have no oxygen in the water. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the term aquifer as it relates to water drawdown. In other words, the overuse of groundwater. So aquifers are groundwater resources. So again, pollution, eutrophication, dead zones, and aquifers. All right, so first of all, let's talk about some basic examples of pollution. Human beings alter water quality oftentimes indirectly. And what you may see throughout Pennsylvania are streams that look like this. And what you're actually seeing here is iron oxides and other metals that have come out of solution that have been transported because the water has been acidified from mining. So when you bring coal to the surface and coal byproducts, and we add water to them, sulfur compounds come out and they produce acids. Those acids make iron and other metals soluble, and as a result they begin to move through in the water. But then as the water buffers or becomes less acidic, these come out of solution and we begin to see these iron compounds in the streams. And what we can see throughout our region is that streams that have been impacted by acid mine drainage are extensive in our area. And in fact, you can see right here, this is Butler County. You can see very broad extents of acid mine impacted streams throughout our region. So this is a form of pollution. We've altered the pH of a stream. Now, we can also talk about alteration of water through discharge and drawdowns. And we often talk about it, broadly speaking, in terms of withdrawal. And so what we see here are two types of withdrawal that we can see in the United States, one of which is going to impact our aquifers. And this is water, again, one of the largest withdrawals of water in the contiguous United States is for irrigation. And so throughout the West, throughout, ironically, the Mississippi Valley, we see massive amounts of water withdrawal for irrigation. And again, here along the Mississippi, we're oftentimes taking water from stream systems for irrigation. Out west, we're taking it from groundwater. But these are massive extents of water that are being pulled from the ground or from the near surface to be used in agriculture. The impacts of this in terms of drawdown of our aquifers, and again, our aquifers are groundwater systems or groundwater resources. This happens to be the Ogallala complex in the central Great Plains. And what you'll notice here is that any area that you see in yellow or orange is the water level in feet that has been drawn down over the period from pre-development, essentially before the 1800s, to 2007. And in some areas, especially in North Texas and in South Kansas, we've seen drawdowns in excess of 100 feet. And that's a massive impact. If we think about this as literally mining water out of these aquifers, and the discharge, while very rapid, the recharge, that is the additions to water, this can be thousands of years. And so here we're pulling water much faster than it goes back into the system. Now, why? Why do we do this? Well, again, this gets back to technology and affluence. In this case, what we can see, all of these circles that you see out here in western Kansas, these are areas of what we call center pivot irrigation. So in the middle of this circle, there's a deep well that is drilled, water is pumped out, and it is irrigated in a center pivot around this. Most of the time, this is to produce corn or wheat. or soybeans in some cases, and a lot of this goes not to feed us, but to feed animals. And so again, affluence and technology. Now, we also use a large amount of water in terms of thermoelectric. And again, this is water that is being altered. It is a form of pollution. And again, please note this, that water is being pulled out of streams in most cases. Most of the time, this is surface water. It's being pulled out and used to cool electric power plants. And as a result, though, the water is then pumped back into the streams at an elevated temperature, which alters that system. So it doesn't have to be a compound that causes pollution. It can simply be temperature. Now, this term eutrophication, and again, eutrophication means a change in oxygen concentration in water, and it's done through a rather complex system, but that is associated oftentimes with agriculture or some type of waste material. And so here's what happens. In an aquatic system, we, either through industrial or domestic waste, add nutrients. Again, we're adding stuff that helps things grow. Mostly phosphates, phosphorus compounds, nitrogen compounds, and as a result of this increase in nutrient load, the algae grow. These very simple plants grow, and in fact, they produce an increase in biologically dissolved, or in a sense, let me clarify that. What they increase is the demand, the biological oxygen demand. Now, because of all this algae and their decomposition, the oxygen is used up, and so we have a depletion in dissolved oxygen. As the depletion of dissolved oxygen occurs and the algae begin to break down, suddenly you have zooplankton coming in to eat all of these things. Well, the problem with that is the zooplankton also die off, and as they die off, they also decompose and they use up even more oxygen. And so the system begins to become incredibly oxygen poor. Now, as all of this flows downstream, what we end up with are zones of hypoxia, that is, of very low oxygen. And most often we see this in the Gulf of Mexico, at where the Mississippi River enters the Gulf, and it is full of nutrients and full of fertilizers from farm and agricultural inputs. And as a result, seasonally, we get this incredible drop in oxygen. Gulf of Mexico along that region becomes a dead zone. Okay, that's it for this lecture. When I come back, we're going to be talking about the troposphere.